first, or we're going to go through first with Dylan? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
we're going to have Dylan go through the items added when we merge the two bills together.
right. Okay, Dylan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to refresh everyone's recollection, what this does is it takes the contents of House Bill 2007 and merges it into SB 125, which was the claims bill. The claims will not appear in this conference list because both of those have already passed both chambers and are therefore not subject to conference. But there are some other items. As a result, certain items dropped off the list, okay, because they're now both in the same bill, and certain items were added to the list. With the patience of the committee, I'll go ahead and mention those items that were added to the list if you want to start on page 6. Second from the top, item 3. This is the Talent Grant Fund. This is add funding and language regarding the Talent Grant Fund. This was on the list previously, but this adds clarification language. The House position is add $1.5 million EDIF. The Senate position was add $3 million from ARPA funds. And turn to page 9. Item 4 in the middle, that's tuberculosis control and prevention. The Senate position was $96,000. The House position that was from SB 125 is $1.5 million. Turn to page 14. It's item 8, second from the top. That's adult virtual school credits. That's add language directing the agency to expend $354,000 from existing funds to pay the Central Plains USD 112 for adult virtual school credits for 26. This would cover 500 adult virtual school credits that were submitted funding in 21-22. The House position is add the language. The Senate position did not recommend adding the language. If you turn to page 15, there's 3 items that are new. Under Fort Hays State University, under Professional Workforce Development, this is delete language adding $750,000 SGF for Fort Hays State University, Professional Workforce Development for 26 from any appropriations bill passed by the 25 legislature. This is technical in nature. The House deleted the funding. The Senate did not recommend deleting the funding. This was funded in 26 last year, so this appropriation would double fund that. Under Historical Society for Quindaro Ruins, there's add $40,000 SGF for the Quindaro Ruins Task Force in 25 and add language regarding the appointment of members that the task force shall collaborate and delineate roles and responsibilities regarding the Quindaro Ruins Archaeological Park, outlines the responsibilities of the task force and requires a report to the House Committee on Appropriations and Senate Committee on Ways and Means on or before January 12th. The House is add the funding and the language. The Senate did not recommend adding the funding and language. And there's a 26 Quindaro Ruins Task Force, which is the same language, and the House add the language. Senate did not recommend adding the language. Turning to page 17. Under KSU Vet Med, under 26, item 1, bonding authority, add language authorizing bonding authority of $130 million for the construction of a veterinary diagnostic laboratory on a Manhattan campus. The House added the language. The Senate did not recommend adding the language. Under 27, bonding authority, it was the same bonding authority. House is adding language. Senate did not recommend adding the language. And if you turn to page 25. Under State Finance Council at the bottom, this is add $10 million of SGF to adopt the Spring Human Services caseloads estimate. That money is appropriated to the State Finance Council and distributed upon a recommendation from the Consensus Human Services Caseload Committee that there was additional funding needed, and of course, at the will of the legislature. The House position is add the funding and the language, and the Senate position is did not recommend adding the funding or the language. And on the very last page, on 26, item 2, that's the Lansing Correctional facility pay differential. That's GBA number 1, item 2. It adds 4.1 million SGF to be released to Department of Corrections upon certification by the Secretary of Corrections that an increase in entry-level correctional officer pay differentials at Lansing Correctional Facility is necessary. Once again, this is an appropriation to the State Finance Council. This is GBA. The House position was to adopt the GBA. The Senate did not take any actions on the GBA, did not recommend adopting the GBA. That's the last item that will be new from the document that we saw last week.
Thank you, Dylan. Any questions for Dylan? Okay, Mr. Chairman?
Are you ready for our offer? First
We're
offer?
ready.
Okay, we'll just go ahead and run down these real quick, starting with the Attorney General for 2025 with the Vine System, Senate. Items for 2, and then also in 26 and 27 with the safe and secure firearm detection. Those are all 3 House modified to $5 million. I know. Board of Bids is a House modified to $2 million. Department Administration for 25 and 26, Senate. The ERP modernization, the House had it that this was coming from the ARPA interest, so House. State House office space, Senate. 27 for docking, Senate. Department of Commerce, MRO, House. E-aviation grant, Senate. Rural remote workplaces, House modified to $1 million out of EDIF. But we're also going to have a discussion about EDIF because there's a lot of differences between the 2 chambers. KC BioHub, again, we probably have $1 million EDIF if available, but again, there's going to be a table. Semi-quincentennial, House. Item number 6, Senate, that also be included in EDIF. So if you want to look at page 3 and 4, we're going to maintain House position on both of those pages just because we are going to have to work out exactly how we want to address EDIF. That would also be the same on number 30 and 31. Judiciary on page 5, 2026, Senate. Mental Health Justice Grant, Senate. Office of the Governor, Senate. Secretary of State, House. State Treasurer, Senate. On page 6, at the top, number 2, the Pregnancy Compassion Awareness Program, House modified at $3 million. Talent Grant Fund, this would be, again, another EDIF item, but spread over 2 years at $1.5 million. Housing Linked Deposit Loan Program, Senate. Build Kansas Aviation Jobs Fund. Kind of wanted to explain this one because in the initial language of House Bill 2007, we do not have the $50 million transfer going into the Build Kansas program. So that locks in approximately $65 million for both the remainder of 2025 and the next fiscal year of 2026. We have about $45 million in pending applications that could draw down from the Build Kansas Fund if they were approved by the federal government. So to leverage this fund as collateral for a loan would be problematic if we're not going to have that $50 million transfer go into 2026. Because that money has to be used, like I said, for 25 and 26. Now, we know the approval rate is fairly low, but still, we need to make sure those funds are available if they are approved. So we have, I would say, a Senate modified where it would come from the Pooled Money Investment Board. And that would be the collateral used for the loan. Human Services, the Nutrition Services Incentive Program, Senate modified at $2 million. CMHC grants, House. Homeless shelter renovation, we have a House modified where they said that they could actually do the renovations, not for $830,000 SGF, which was the House position, but for $650,000. Items 4 and 5, House. Item 6, Senate. 7, Senate. 8 and 9, House. 10, Senate. 11, House. Lottery vending machine transfer, Senate. And then the items under DCF for 1 and 2, House. Item number 3, Senate. The summer EBT fraud reimbursement, we have basically a Senate modified to 0. And the number 5, House. 6, House. We have some questions in the Department of Labor on item number 1. So we're going to maintain the House position. Sheltered Workshop Transition Grant Program, House. For Health and Environment Health, for items 1, 2, and 3, Senate. 4 and 5, Senate. And the reason why on number 5, we took the Senate position because we found out that we don't need to add 30 positions. They can do this anyways with the federal money that is received. So there's no need to say we're going to add 30 positions. That'll also be the same where we have 8.1 FTE positions in the same case. For fiscal year 2026, the hospital outpatient rates, House. 2, Senate. 3, Senate. Number 4, Senate modified at $250,000. Item number 5, House. 6, 7, and 8, Senate. There's those positions again. So Senate. Larned State Hospital. Item number 1, House. And fiscal year 2026, House. And then in Osawatomie, Senate. For Board of Regents, we need to have a much larger conversation in regards to the Board of Regents. So the rest of the items, 1 through 6 on page 10 are House, as is the entire page of page 11. Although if I could ask staff if we could have the bill number that was passed last year in regards to number 8. I'd like to reference that bill. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You had the bill that passed last year to create the Kansas Campus Restoration Act. That was Senate Bill 18.
All right, Senate Bill 18. All right, thank you. Then on page 12, item number 12, House. Blueprint for Literacy, Senate. 14, 15, 16, House. 18, 19, Senate. Department of Education for 2025. This money has already gone out. And so we don't think it's, the House position is we don't think it's fair to go back to the school districts and try to retrieve those dollars. So everything in regards to the Department of Education on 1, 2, 3, and 4 is the House position, as is 5 and 6, except for number 7 would be Senate. CIF section in 2026, Senate. Item number 2, House. The Child Care Accelerator grants, we have a House modified and not having that come from ARPA interest because that's going to be another larger conversation that we're going to have in regards to what we want to fund with the ARPA interest, so that we have an offer that it's modified to SGF. Toiletry kits, House. Item number 5 and 6, Senate. Seven, Senate. 8, House. 9, Senate. 10, Senate. 11 to 15, House. 16, Senate. In 2027, special education funding, House. This is in regards to the needs-based aid, financial need. So that'd be House, Fort Hays State University's House. Item number 2, Dylan explained, this would be double funded in 2026. So the House had the deleting of the funding, so that's House. Then Historical Society for 25 and 26, both of those are House. As is the entire page on page 16. And then on page 17, number 7, House, Bonding Authority, House, Pittsburgh State University, House, School for the Blind, Senate, 26, Senate, School for the Deaf, we have a Senate modified where that would be 300,000, not from the Job Creation Program Fund, but to SGF. State Library, Senate, University of Kansas Geological Survey, House. Again, needs-based aid, House. FTE exemption, House. And the reason why we want to maintain the House position on this is because they actually have offers out to individuals. So we wanted to freeze the FTE provision lapse. KU Medical Center, House. Aviation Research, Senate. Then items 2 and 3 on page 18, House. Both of those. Adjutant General, items 1 and 2 are both Senate. And for fiscal year 2026, KDM Federal Cut, Senate. Department of Corrections, item number 1, House. 2 and 3, Senate. 4, House. JAG-K funding, House. El Dorado Correctional Facility, this is facility operations, Senate. Highway Patrol, we're going to leave that at House for right now. KHP Wichita Hangar, Senate. Troop C Headquarters, House. Hutchinson Correctional Facility, Senate. KBI, items number 1, 2, and 3, Senate. Okay, for item number 4, for the KBI headquarters, there's been a lot of confusion on what's going on with this. At first, it was an ask for SGF to fund for a new building. They have yet to decide a location on where to build the land. It's between many different areas, actually. In fact, I've been handed some information today that is saying it's renovating a building in downtown Topeka, or it's the old Minigers facility, or it's a combination of both. I mean, so I think it would be the House position, but we would modify that with language that we need to have a definitive plan on the KBI headquarters, a dollar amount on how much it's going to cost, and they would report to the Legislative Budget Committee and also the Joint Committee on Building and Construction during the interim. And then we would have a further discussion in regards to the KBI building, a new KBI building, also what the plan is for the old one, on what they plan to do with that in the legislative session of 2026. Sentencing Commission, item number 1, be the reappropriation, Senate modified of $1 million. Winfield Correctional Facility, Senate. Local Farm to Food Program, items number, well, actually all the rest of the page, item 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is House. And again, we need to have some type of global discussion in regards to how we want to address the money that we're going to be towards water needs. Agricultural marketing, House. Bivlos operations, House. Proviso for meat and poultry, Senate. Department of Wildlife and Parks, items 1, 2, and 3 are EDIF, so it's a global discussion, so that's all House. And I think we need more information in regards to the marina at Cheney Lake, so that's House. Here's that 8.1 FTE positions that I referenced earlier with the 30. This is federal money that they can actually create these positions themselves, so we don't need to specify it in the bill, so that would be Senate. Water in regards to item number 1, so that's House. 2 is House. 3, again, Senate. 4, Senate. Kansas State Fair, item number 1, Senate. Expo Center Rehabilitation, Senate. State Fair operating expenditures, Senate. And since we accepted the item number 1 in regards to item number 3 for fiscal year 2026, that would be Senate. Then with the Kansas Water Office, items 1 and 2 on page 23 is House. 3, 4, 5, and 6 is House. Item number 1 in regards to statewide adjustments in fiscal year 25, then item number 3 at the bottom of the page. We have concern about investing that money into CAPERS, half of the budget stabilization fund into CAPERS. Even though there might be a higher rate of return, there's also a higher rate of risk. And we've been very diligent in the last few years. In fact, when we created the budget stabilization fund, for years we had a zero balance. And now we're nearing a balance of almost $1.8 billion. And I don't think we want to jeopardize that balance. So we would have a House modified that would say we'd leave it in the current funding model that it is, or investment model, but we would also give the state treasurer some latitude as far as in regards to leveraging those funds with limited risk to try to generate more of a rate of return. It's a House modified. For fiscal year 2026, the SGF lapse, there's been some concerns with some of the agencies in regards to a 3%, which is what the Senate proposed. So we would take your language in regards to your provision in this, but maintain the 1.5% for 26, and then also 1.5% for 27. So that gives the agencies time to look at their budgets and then try to streamline that in regards to the 1.5 for each fiscal year. Return to office mandate, Senate. There's the budget stabilization fund adjustment again, so House modified. Vacant positions, we agree with the Senate that would probably be easier at the end of the year than in the beginning of the year. So Senate. 27 is the House modified again in regards to the budget stabilization fund. In regards to the state employee pay, I spoke with the Department of Administration, and they said it would be, I don't say more prudent, but of accepting the House position in regards to the state employee pay. State employee pay plan in the EDIF, we take Senate position, the State Finance Council. So when we're going to adjourn before the consensus revenue is here, and also the human services caseloads. And we've been told that we could have possibly an increase that would need to be addressed in regards to human services caseloads. So this would allocate $10 million to the State Finance Council to address those higher needs in caseloads. If that money is not utilized, then it lapses back to SGF. So House position. DEI elimination, Senate. And then on the Lansing Correctional Facility pay differential, this was a GBA from the governor's office. And we adopted the GBA just to keep our correctional officer pay in line if there would happen to be a immigration detention center that's put into Lansing by the federal government. And so we adopted the governor's GBA, and that is it. So that's a House position. The only other item Jill has been working on language in regards to, I believe it's House Bill 2393, which was the maintaining of the fees for the judicial branch. That bill is still sitting below the line. If we do not move that forward or put it into the budget bill with an extension for 2 years, then that could be a hit to SGF of approximately $7 million. So that would be in the offer as well. And then if you want to move forward also with House Bill 2402, that is the Blue Ribbon Commission. And if this does, we'd have language in there that if it does happen to pass, obviously this would be negated out of the budget bill. And I believe that's it. So that'd be our offer, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That HB 2402 blue ribbon on what's this, the blue ribbon committee for?
On higher ed.
Higher ed, okay. Senator Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think we can probably move forward clearing a lot of this off in our next meeting, but feels to me we have 4 kind of, I'm gonna call major issues left, right? What does EDIF look like? So a global EDIF proposal. Looks like higher ed might have a global proposal. And then determining what exactly is ARPA interest, what's available, what comes from that, what doesn't. And then the water issue. With that,
That is correct.
Kind of 4 major issues.
We'll need to come to consensus on those 4 items to move forward. I know we've had a proposal on EDIF. There's a proposal on your side on EDIF, and we'll just have to meet in the middle. We do have a proposal from the Water Committee on how to move forward with water, and then higher ed and the ARPA interest, which I believe the last time we were notified, it was about $35 million.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any questions on your side?
Representative Ballard.
I would have lots of questions, but I guess I would probably, I'm going to have a little opposition here. If I just start on page 26, I would look at the DEI elimination. I understand that seems to be something that's national, and everybody seems to be doing that. But I guess my question would be, if you're eliminating these positions, are you releasing the people that are holding these positions? Are you asking universities and other places to do it? How are you handling this by just simply saying we want to eliminate it?
President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the activity that's being eliminated, not the position itself, right? So if you got an individual, you're asking them to certify to kind of stop participating in that type of activity that's being basically rejected nationwide. And so I don't see it even as a risk. They say they're doing it anyway, so. But it's not a necessarily elimination of the position. It is, technically it's a position, but the individual human, there's no dictation that they have to be fired.
Okay, but if I look at the language and it says delete 4 million from the office and the department and add language authorizing the State Finance Council to transfer the money. So the money is still there, the positions are still there, but then what are the people doing?
That's up to the administration, as long as they're not doing this, right? As long as you're certifying you're not participating in those activities, the funding moves on through. It's almost identical to what happened last year with the DEI stuff in higher ed, and they just certified it the Finance Council and all the money went through.
Okay.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
I was just wondering, on the homeless shelter, you have money in there still, and could you provide us more information about that homeless shelter location? And then you'd also mentioned about looking globally at EDIF, but yet on page 2, under numbers 3 and 4, the rural remote workplace and the KC BioHub, you have presented a modified, would that be correct, with EDIF funding?
That is correct. And I mean, all of us have been in part of conference committees before, and everything is subject to change. So we have a House modified on those because it was coming from ARPA interest. It wasn't coming from EDIF. That's why it's a modified. That'll be part of the discussion when we have EDIF. In regards to your first question, that homeless shelter is located in Liberal in Seward County.
Thank you.
Other questions? Not on your side? Yeah, everybody good?
Yes.
Representative Ballard.
Yes, I do have one more, and it's on page 18. Actually, I have a lot more, but I'll just stick with 18. Student financial aid for 26. House position, I had it in reverse. We didn't remove the funding, so I'm fine with that. Okay.
Let me talk to my committee members here, 1 second.
That's fine.
We're on the floor too, and so we'll try to get together and look at your offer and come back with another offer. And we don't know when because we're on the floor, so I'll just have to announce it on the floor, and I'll text you, and you can let your committee members know.
That's fine, because we're back on the floor at 2 as well.
Okay, all right. Anything else?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, thank you a lot. We appreciate it, and we're adjourned.